All right, everyone, it's time for me to weigh in on that trickiest of topics, which is the Israel-Palestine dust-up, which has been happening constantly since, the fucking 1940s or 50s, I think. So it's been a long time that there's nonstop, low-level simmering warfare within the region. Very, very sad. Here's my thoughts. It's in three parts because you have to take these separately. Some people are conflating everything in the region together because they get really, really self-righteous because of usually religious reasons, and they either say, I'm 100% with Israel, they should do whatever they want, or they say, I'm 100% with the Palestinians, screw the Israelis, and they take up a very absolutist black and white sort of argument. I don't do that because I see that it's more complex than that. So the first part is that Haaretz, this is not part of the conflict there itself, or part of the embassy move. They declared that the Israeli government was alt-right. I thought to myself, just as an aside, how funny it was that they're declaring a bunch of Jews now to be Nazis as well. So you do realize Haaretz does not appear to understand that it's actually itself making the same claim as some people within the alt-right. Oh yeah, they're the real Nazis because look at how they're treating this, open-air ghetto basically of Gaza. Okay, you're making the same argument as the people that you're calling out the Israeli government as, despite being generally in favor of the Jewish people, because Haaretz is, I believe, predominantly a Jewish publication. Okay, that's a really, really confusing situation. I don't quite understand it, dude. It's like, yeah, I'm critical of the Israeli government plenty, but that doesn't make them alt-righters. That makes them imperialistic, actually. Therefore, more like a Merkelite globalist. Silent imperialism, that's what you should call it. Second is the embassy move itself. The embassy move to Jerusalem by the United States that was enacted, which is sort of in the lead up to this latest round of violence. The move itself was proposed and codified in 1995. It's nothing contemporary. It's from last generation, essentially. Back when MTV was still relevant, back when Clinton was in office. You have to go through two entire two-term presidencies and half of Clinton's presidency before you get to the modern era, from when this was already codified by Congress. They had already passed the resolution to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move the embassy there in 1995. But the U.S. government never had the balls to actually do it. The President of the United States, sworn up to enact the actual proposal, never had the balls. Clinton never had the balls because he didn't want to raise the specter of increased violence there. He didn't want it to become a campaign issue, probably. Oh, this might have a drag on my approval if millions of people die over in a regional war, so I think that I'm going to avoid this right now. And then W came along and he just didn't have balls, even though he was probably in favor of it. And then Obama comes along and I don't even think he was in favor of the concept of moving the embassy. I think he's come out and condemned the concept, this will lead to violence or whatever. Okay, okay, there's violence already in the region. What more need you know? But then we have to get to the third part of the situation, which is the specific killing of certain Palestinians. I believe 58 dead now and several hundred wounded at last. I believe that's what I saw last by the IDF. What happened is a group of Gazans got together, and there were rockets fired, stones, thrown, and sticks, beaten against trash can lids, and the usual stuff that goes on anytime something slight happens on either side of the fence in Gaza. And the IDF opened fire and killed a bunch of people. I condemn this. And I can condemn this it's a mystery to certain people how you can condemn the IDF butchering a bunch of innocent civilians, which appears to be largely what was killed here. It's a mystery to them how you can do that and still support Israel's right to exist. They take up an either-or sort of stance. Oh, well, if you support Israel's right to exist and don't want to Holocaust the entire population there, you have to let the IDF do exactly whatever they want. No, there are other options open, like, act like a standardized first world nation that Israel is. Act within the boundaries of normal national behavior like most countries choose to do. Meanwhile, we've got a situation, this was pointed out. You got a situation where some cop opens fire with non-lethal weapons on a horde of people that are rioting in like the borderlands of Europe during the height of their migrant crisis. International condemnation, Evil bigot, they must be fired, probably they need to be put in jail. Horrible, the country must apologize. Terrible, violating human rights. A bunch of Palestinians are killed, despite the fact that it appears, again, most of them were unarmed civilians. They're not Hamas members, they're not actually firing rockets, they're just civilians sitting there chanting. Nobody cares. The same sort of people don't care. I find that very, very strange. I find that condemnable as well. Like I told Fuentes, I support Israel's right to exist. I do not support its right to steadily encroach upon, destroy its neighbors, attack civilians, and try to make the Palestinians not exist. Generally speaking, in the general weight of things, I side more with the civilians of Palestine than with any other actor. Not Hamas, not really the PLO, they're just inept. And I think the Israelis backed the PLO's existence until they didn't want to give up a bunch of land. The Israeli government is butcherous. The Israeli civilians are the ones that have to suffer, by the way, when there are reprisals for this sort of thing. But when you manage like Gaza, it's basically an open-air ghetto. It's been blockaded for years, and there's critical shortages of every supply. And then you claim, oh, well, anytime we send supplies, Hamas takes them. Well, don't you think after decades of trying this, you could try something different that's more humane? It's not like Israel's going to stop existing because a couple Palestinians threw rocks. These aren't Hamas, they're not terrorists. Most of these people are civilians, and they're pissed off. Rightfully so. They think Jerusalem belongs to Palestine. Don't you see why they'd be upset? As far as I'm concerned, Jerusalem should belong to the United States. We should carve it into a microstate, put a big base there, and then manage the whole region directly, since it's obvious nobody else can do so. It's obvious at this point that the two governments, the PLO and the Israeli government, are never going to pledge themselves to peace, don't want to get along, and primarily just want to use one another as target practice. Okay, well then maybe Big Brother should step in. Maybe a country that's capable of running the region should step in. Return to the Pax Romana or something like that. Get Italy involved. Let the Vatican run it. So, there are Christians in there. Okay, the Pope's private army's marching in. We're tired of this shit. We got to defend these churches from being hit by rockets. Do something about it. But as far as the embassy move, as far as that, it was Congress already put that through in the 90s. It doesn't really matter so much, but we do have to admit that it is what caused this latest round of protests, riots, and bottle rockets being fired. By the way, and I will say, come on, there's a big difference between a bottle rocket without any sort of explosive potential fired by Hamas that hits the ground and does nothing basically, and occasionally might damage something or kill someone, which is regrettable, but sporadic because they can't aim them. There's a big difference between that and using like a cluster bomb over a crowded metropolitan area dropped by any of a number of U.S. supplied aircraft that are fielded by Israel. It's a big difference. Israel has a standardized military and nuclear weapons. You're a nuclear state, a modern nuclear state. You've got thermonuclear weapons. It's like if North Korea wouldn't be compelled into thinking that its existence was at risk if a few 100,000 people started throwing rocks at their border wall. I don't think that they would care. It's just not going to happen. Haaretz is a laughable article. I mean, it's funny. It's more a comedy piece than anything. I condemn, the Israeli military for its actions against Palestinian civilians. As far as the embassy goes, though, it's the U.S., by the way, we have the right to move our embassy there if we want to. That has nothing to do with even the Israeli government didn't make the decision, we did. As far as the PLO or whatever condemning it, the Iranians getting upset, it's like, okay, well, keep your embassy in Tel Aviv then. Go ahead. We're moving it to wherever we fucking want to move it. I don't know that it's helpful. I don't know that it really is more than symbolic if it is helpful at all, but I mean, it is our right. We're a sovereign nation too. We can do that. We could also not have an embassy at all like we do with, we don't have an embassy in North Korea. I don't think we have an embassy in Turkmenistan. You wouldn't dare to step outside. You'd probably get enslaved. Be a little bit of a problem. Plus, no internet access. It's like, yeah, I had to use a satellite card. I get internet for 2 hours every day at a really low dial-up level speed. Wonderful to work in this embassy. It's where you put your political opponents' kids that want to enter rungs of government. You're the ambassador to Turkmenistan. Congratulations! 6-figure salary you can't buy anything with. Maybe you can buy a bag of Durham weed or something. That's about all. Peace out.